All right, let's talk about playoff predictions here. Again, I'm doing this as I've been doing it every week, although this week's slightly different. Just I'm using the Pro Football Network playoff machine because I haven't been able to figure out the ESPN playoff machine like hasn't been working. I don't know why. I searched online. It seems like other people are also having the issue. So just using the if you're someone who also has been having that issue, Pro Football Network has a similar playoff machine, just slightly different layout is all the differences there. So yeah, let's talk about it's basically the way it works. If you haven't seen one of these before, I predict who I believe is going to win every single game from here on out. And these are the teams I have in the NFC and which seeds they are going to be, they're projected to get. So the 49ers, I still have projected to get the 1 seed right here. And again, feels likely. Not only so their record isn't on there, but it's 14-3 is their projected record. So they would actually have to lose both of their next 2 games, and the Eagles would have to win both of their next 2 games for the Eagles to jump them. Doesn't feel like it's going to happen. Seems like the Niners are pretty locked in to the 1 seed right here. Eagles and Lions feel pretty locked into their seeds as well. Yes, it is possible the Cowboys could jump the Eagles, but again, it would take 2 wins and 2 Eagles losses, which feels unlikely. And Tampa Bay there is a way they could get knocked out as well. I'll talk about it once we get to the whole conference, but there is a way they could get knocked out. But 1 through 5 feels set in stone. It feels pretty confident that's what's going to happen. I do have Seattle and the Rams getting in as the kind of 2 other wildcard teams. Let's go over to the whole conference so we can talk about it here. Let's actually start with the NFC South. I know usually I like to go kind of from left to right, but here, let's go to the NFC South because there are still 3 teams that technically do have a chance. Now, for them to have a chance, first things first, Tampa Bay has to, it's actually pretty simple. Tampa Bay has to lose out, and either the Falcons or Saints have to win out. It's that simple. If that happens, then the Falcons would be in or the Saints would be in. The Falcons and Saints can't both win out. They play each other the final game of the season. So, and the Buccaneers play the Saints next week. So, feels pretty likely that the Buccaneers will win the division. They play the Panthers the last game of the season. Feels, pretty locked in stone, but not a guaranteed spot. As for a potential wild card spot, that actually might be where some of these teams have better chances to get in. We'll start off with Atlanta because I am projecting them to still win out. I'm projecting them to go 9-8. That's the best they can do. And while that itself wouldn't be enough to get them in, if they get some real help, they can get in. It would quite frankly take a surprising loss. Like if the Rams lost to the Giants next week, that would be enough. The Falcons would get into the 7th seed. So hey, Giants have them playing better football, but the Rams are going to be pretty heavily favored in that one. Also, if they can get Seattle to lose out here, which, again, they're playing the Steelers next week. That doesn't feel impossible, but then they would also play the Cardinals. That feels a lot less likely. So they would need some real help. Probably the Giants beating the Rams is, I think, what the Falcons would need, or the Panthers beating the Buccaneers on the final game of the season, and the Buccaneers losing to the Saints, and you still have to win next week. Let's go over to the NFC West, so just, a little bit over towards the right. As I said, both of those 2 teams feel pretty good. For Seattle, I'm projecting them to win both of their next 2 games. Next week is not a given against these Steelers by any means, but a loss there still gets you into the playoffs. They would just drop to the 7th seed, so which matters a little, but at the end of the day, you're just trying to get in at this point. So feels like they're pretty good to get in. Actually, the real way I think they could potentially get out is if the Steelers lose and a different team ends up winning more than maybe we expect. For example, if they lose a game next week to the Steelers and then the Vikings are able to win against the Lions, well, then the Vikings would get the 6th seed and the Seahawks would be the ones who drop out in that scenario. But right off the bat, you feel okay if you're a Seahawks fan. Win your 2 games and you're in. And also we're mentioning with the Vikings, if they win the last game of the season and everything else holds, well, then actually they would get the 7th seed and the Rams would be knocked out. So that's kind of the Rams' biggest concern is if something like that happens. Now, it's also worth mentioning, I'm predicting the Rams to lose the final game of the season. But maybe that's not a fair prediction because the 49ers, like I said, they could clinch the 1 seed after this week. If they do that, do they rest their starters? I don't know. Maybe they have them play a half. Maybe they have them play the whole game, but they're not really into it. Maybe they play the whole game, they're really into it. The Rams still lose. There's just that extra wild card. So it is possible for the Vikings to win and the Rams to win. If that happens, then it would still be the Rams and Seahawks. The Vikings would be out in that scenario. Going over to the NFC North, because there's nothing to talk about with the NFC East, really. So, everything we already kind of talked about. So, NFC North here is the other factor. As I mentioned, the Vikings and the Packers. So, the Vikings play the Packers next week. I predicted a Vikings victory, but if it goes the other way, actually, that would be enough. The Packers would be a team to get into the Rams, to beat the Rams. So that's another way the Rams could be knocked out. The Rams maybe have to win that last game of the season. Their spot is not totally locked in. However, if the Packers do not win out, I think they're done. I don't think 8 and 9 is getting them in. I think they have to win out. If they do win out, there is a very good chance they make the playoffs as long as the 49ers are able to beat the Rams the final game of the season. And for the Vikings, I kind of already talked about them. So, yeah, that's kind of the playoff picture there. Let's move on to the AFC, which is actually even more complex. As for the AFC, look who is in the number 7 seed. Yes, the Bills, for the first time since I've done this, I started about a month ago, the Bills would be in the playoffs if my predictions hold. You have the 1 through 7, the Ravens. Interestingly, between the Ravens, Chiefs, and Dolphins, they all have viable chances to get the 1 seed. So the Ravens, if they win out, or in fact, if they just go 2-1, they get the 1 seed. That's actually what I predicted. I predicted them losing to San Francisco, beating Miami. If they lose to both San Francisco and Miami, then Miami would get the 1 seed. If Miami beats the Ravens and the Ravens lose to the 49ers, and then Miami loses to the Bills, then the Chiefs could get the 1 seed. So all three of those teams have chances to get there. I actually think the Ravens have the best odds. Dolphins, with their win over Dallas, I would actually say now has the second best odds, despite the fact that they're currently in the 3 seed. And Kansas City's looking unlikely, but still possible. The Jaguars are, I currently still do have them, winning out. They have 2 very easy games on, I wouldn't say very easy, but the Panthers next week, who, they've been playing better, but that should be a win. And then the Jaguars play the Titans, who are never an easy win, but 2 games that the Jaguars will be favored in. They win those, they could get the 4 seed. I think the Browns are in. In fact, if everything else holds, even if the Browns lose both of their next 2 games, it would still be enough for my predictions for them to get into the playoffs. So I feel like for me, the 1, 2, and 3 seeds are locked in. Now, the Dolphins could actually drop all the way to the 7 seed if the Bills, were to just win the last game of the season, but they would still be in the playoffs at least. I think the Browns are for sure in the playoffs. Let's go to the entire conference so we can talk about which teams could still get in and which teams could still get knocked out. So here we go, and let's make it less confusing by going left to right here. And again, the divisions are in columns instead of rows. Don't know why they do that, but that's just how they do it, so we'll go with it. The Bills, like I said, would be the 7th seed. Still a lot of work to be done, though, but there is potential even for them they have a little bit of leeway now. Actually, the Broncos losing to the Patriots was huge because now they don't really need a lot of help. In fact, they don't need any help. They win the next 2, they're in. It's that simple. I think there might technically be a scenario where they could win both and not get in, but realistically, they win both, they're getting in. They do play Miami the last game of the season, which if they win that one, they could get all the way to the 3 seed. They could win the division if everything else holds. Going over to the AFC North, like I said, Ravens and Browns are pretty much locked in. The Steelers have an outside shot at getting in. Really what they have to do, it's actually pretty simple for them. They pretty much have to win out. If they win out, they're probably in, but the odds of winning out are tough. They play Seattle and Baltimore. I do not think they win out, and I don't think they get in, but it's possible. The Bengals, they would actually need a little bit of help along with winning out, and they play Kansas City and Cleveland. Their odds are not 0, but losing to Pittsburgh has made it very close to 0. The AFC South is interesting. So I did still have the Texans getting in as the 6th seed. But so they played the Colts the final game of the season. If the Colts win, they would get the 6th seed. So, and then the Texans would be out. The Bills would still remain as the 7th seed. So that could very well end up being a win and you're in, lose and you're out type of game, which could be very fascinating. I do think I'm projecting a Texans victory because I'm assuming Stroud will be back. But if he's not back, then I do think the Colts probably win that game and they probably end up as the 6th seed. So very fascinating stuff there. And as for the Broncos, the last team to talk about that really has a chance, no getting around it. They really screwed up by losing to the Patriots. And I think that'll probably cost them their real chance. I was trying to figure out the best way for them to get in. It seems like what they would need is next week they would need a Bills loss to the Patriots. And that wouldn't even be enough. They'd probably also need like a Texans loss to the Titans, something like that. They would need a Bills loss to the Patriots. It seems like, barring a tie, which I tend to not even talk about because those are so rare, barring a tie, seems like, unless there's some other way that I just missed, seems like they need a lot of help down the stretch. I'm kind of counting out the Broncos and the Bengals. The Steelers, I'm mostly counting out. My prediction at this point is that I think the Bills get in, I think the Browns get in, and I think the winner of Texans-Colts on week 17, I think they get in. I think the Jaguars still win their division, and they're the team that ends up winning the South. If they lose a game, they're probably out altogether. So they need to win out to get in, but I think they do win out. I think they get in. So yeah, those are my predictions. I think the Ravens win the conference with the Dolphins and Chiefs not far behind. I think the Jaguars get in as the 4 seed, and then I think the Browns, Jaguars, that would be a wild card matchup. I don't know, just a lot of interesting stuff. But yeah, those are my thoughts on all this. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.